Okhódayapi. My name is Barry Hand. I'm the program director for Owámniyomni Okhódayapi. Pidamaya, thank you for joining us for this Lifeways video series. From traditional cooking to the role water plays in our everyday life to our traditional games and how they connect our generations from long ago to today. Continuing the legacy of our ancestors while honoring the land and traditions that sustain us. We hope you enjoy the video and carry these lessons forward in your own journey.
Owámniyomni, welcome back to another Dakota Lifeway video. My name is Kahomy Weston and I am the program and project coordinator for Owámniyomni Okhódayapi. Today we are going to be learning how to do porcupine quill work and specifically how to wrap porcupine quills around rawhide. Long before beads were introduced to our people, we would use porcupine quills to adorn and embellish our regalia, our everyday clothing, and that was just a way to create unique style amongst ourselves. There's a lot of different ways to dye porcupine quills. You can use natural dyes, earth dyes, but nowadays we use like RIT dye that you can buy at your local craft store. For today's purpose of just demonstrating and learning, we are just going to be using plain white quills. There's applique and embroidery quill work, which you would use a needle and thread or sinew and sew down the porcupine quills onto the material, either leather or something sturdy. And then there is wrapping quill work, which is what we're going to be doing today with this. There is also looming or plaiting style of quill work. And there's also birch bark quill work, which is used more in the Eastern tribes. I've seen people use plastic because it's easier, more convenient to use. But today we'll be using rawhide, which is kaha. You will need porcupine quills, obviously. You can get porcupine quills from a lot of different places. You can either find them on the side of the road as roadkill and harvest the quills. A lot of people trap porcupines or hunt them. And then there's a lot of trading posts now that sell the quills like this already harvested off of the animal. Or sometimes you can buy the entire pelt of a porcupine and harvest the quills yourself. So you'll need quills, you'll need rawhide, you'll need sinew, and the Dakota words for these, sinew is kaka, porcupine quills are pahi, rawhide is kaha. The first step is obviously you want to get your porcupine and start plucking the quills off. A lot of people use gloves or even pliers to get them off. There's different parts of the porcupine that you would want to harvest the quills for different techniques or different styles of quill work that you're doing. For example, right on top of the neck and by the tail will be like the thickest quills. They're the really big quills. And then once you go down the side and more towards like the stomach underneath, then the quills start to get smaller and thinner. So we can use all of those things. It's just your preference on what size you like to use and what you're making. So the first step is to harvest them. Second step is to wash your quills because porcupine quills and even their hair is really greasy. So you want to wash them. And the way I do it is I wash them with Dawn dish soap in some warm water. And once the porcupines are soaked in water, they actually become really, really soft. Like right now they're hard and like sharp. But once they're in water, they become really soft. So you're able to like wash them in the water. And then you want to make sure you rinse them really well. Let them dry first. And then the next step would be to dye your quills if you choose to do that. Again, there's lots of different ways that you can dye quills. You can use more traditional ways of dyeing quills. Nowadays, people use a lot of things we find in the craft stores like RIT dye. I've seen people use Kool-Aid, which is kind of interesting. But there's all these different dyes that people use nowadays, and it just depends on what color you like. So that's one of the steps, is dyeing the quills. The next step after that is to sort them. So you'll get a lot of hair in the quills, like the fuzzy hair underneath the quills, and you'll just want to like take that out. You can discard it, and then you'll be left with like just the quills to work with. When you're ready to sit down and start quilling, you'd want to get your quills out and start sorting them, and you want them to be all relatively the same size. That way your work is consistent. For this technique of quill work that we're going to be wrapping, I've sorted my quills here, and I'm going to soak them in water for a little bit until they're soft, and then we're going to cut the tip off. To get started for this purpose, we're just going to be quilling a small strip. You can make bracelets, you can make earrings out of these, you can quill them and put them onto like feathers. A lot of different things that you can do with a strip of quill work. What you're going to do first is you're going to get your piece of rawhide, and with a ruler, you want to draw your line just to keep it straight. And then using a scissors, a non-fabric scissor, so if you have an old scissor around, or even leather scissors, work really good. Then you're just going to go ahead and cut your rawhide. And you want to cut it as long as you need to, or whatever you're making. The one we're going to be using today is 8 inches long. To start, we are going to face the rawhide down. So whatever side that's going to be like the pretty side is going to be face down. And then the wrapped side will be facing you, face up. And then we're going to take your porcupine quill. You want to find the longest quill because that's going to be like our starter quill. And that's going to go wrapped around twice to like secure. And then before you actually start going, you're going to start with your quill underneath the rawhide at the very tip, since we're making a strip, and then you want to fold the long end of the quill over and then fold the tip downwards. And then from here, you're going to wrap the quill all the way around the rawhide in the back. And so the tail of your quill is now sticking out and the tip of the quill is wrapped and facing downward. So that's the very first quill. And then you can look at the pretty side of it, and you want to make sure your quills are like right next to each other so you can scoot it up a little bit. I like to dry mine off on a paper towel because your rawhide, if it gets too wet, rawhide also becomes bendable and pliable, so you don't really want it to get too wet. So to add the second quill, you're going to actually lay the quill right on top of the rawhide and fold over the tail of the previous quill over it, and then fold the tip of the new quill down so it creates like a V shape. The tail of the previous quill, you're going to fold that down also between the V. And then from here, you're going to take the entire quill and you're going to wrap it around the rawhide. If your quills are long enough, you can go twice, sometimes 3 if you get a really good long piece of quill work, or if your rawhide is a thinner piece. And you want to make sure you pull tight. You want to make sure your quills are right next to each other. And then what I like to do is cut the little tail off here. And then we're going to add our third quill. Again, you're going to lay your new quill right on top of your rawhide. Fold over the tail of the previous quill. Fold down the tip of the new quill so it creates a V shape. And then you're going to fold back the tail of the previous quill between the V. And then you're going to grab the tail of the new quill and wrap it all the way around the rawhide. And so in doing this, you're like tying the quills on the back. And like I said before, when the quills are wet, they're very pliable. You're able to bend them and manipulate them the way you want them to set, because once they're dry, they'll be dry that way. And so that's what's unique about quill work. Again, we're going to cut the tail off of the previous quill. You can use a scissors, or you can use those X-Acto razors, or those tiny scissors, whatever works for you. There's stories that go along with porcupine quill work and the techniques we use, and each tribe has their own stories, their own teachings, oral history about porcupine quill work. For us specifically, Dakota, Lakota people, we get our teachings of porcupines and the quill work from Anongite, which is double-faced woman. And personally, for me, that's not a story that is to be shared like on social media or anything like that. I really encourage you, if you're serious about learning quill work and want to know the teachings of quill work, to seek out any elder or any other quill work artist, and listen to those stories in person while you're learning, because it just gives meaning to the work, and you're honoring her and what she brought to us and why we do quill work. A lot of our people back in the day were quill work artists because, we just had to know these things. We learned these things as young women, young men. And so this is just something that we did to adorn ourselves, to make things for our family members, to make giveaway things, make things special, because we are so unique in that way. So to relearn how to do quill work, I think it's really important and really special to bring that back to our oyate, because, again, beads were foreign to us at one time, and porcupine quill work is one of the oldest art forms on this land. So I really encourage you to seek out those stories for yourself and really hold on to them and be able to pass them down. Now that we're close to the end, you want to estimate maybe 3, even 2 quills before the actual end, and you're going to get a piece of sinew, just a small piece, and you're going to make a little loop, and you're going to lay it down like this, so that your loop is facing you towards the bottom, and you're going to finish your quill work on top of that piece of sinew. You want to make sure you really use your fingertips to hold everything in place. And so you're just going to continue down on top of that piece of sinew. Again, this is the way I was taught. So personally, I feel like it's a little bit more secure. So then what we're going to do is you're going to snip the very last quill, the tail, off. Now I have it faced outward. And you're going to pull your sinew through. And so what we're going to do is we're going to carefully pull that sinew down. We're going to loop the sinew over the little tail piece that we have here, the very last quill. And then you're going to slowly pull the sinew, and you're going to pull that quill through your work. And then the very tips of these, you want to use your scissors or razor to cut those tips off completely. So your quill work should, once it dries, these will dry tied together like this, and it shouldn't be able to come apart. There you go. Now that you know this style of quill work, there's a lot of different ways you can create your own designs within them using different colors. You can adorn yourself, make jewelry, make parts of regalia, or just, finding unique ways on how to utilize our quill work in our artistry. Pilamayae, Naish Pidamayae for joining us on another Dakota Lifeway video.